All right. Back again on Monday night. Some green on the board. I don't know about you guys, but it's nice to see the price going in the right direction in the markets. I still think we're in for some volatility here. We'll talk about all the macro stuff, get into the questions as we do every Monday and Wednesday night. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule to come here and ask great questions and listen in. Hopefully, this is valuable for you. If it is, please like, subscribe, share, do all the stuff, hype it if it's over there on YouTube. We'll get into where the market is, what's going on, and then we'll get into the questions as we always do. So, yesterday on Trump's birthday, we got an MOU signed between Trump and Iran. Is that a deal? Is it signed? Is it done? Is the Strait of Hormuz open? No. It is the beginning of a conversation about that's supposed to happen this Friday on the 19th in Switzerland. So for those that don't know, MOUs are memorandums of understanding. They're basically like, cool, we're going to have a conversation about these things, and this is what it's going to entail. And there's still a lot left to negotiate and commercials to come through. And it's not a signed agreement, but it's the beginning of one. Similar to an LOI or letter of intent. If you go to acquire a company or enter a business transaction, it allows you to do deeper due diligence and like comb through things and share information, but it is not a signed deal. So I would love it, just like everybody else would, if this conflict was over and resolved and there were no more issues. There are a lot of conflicting things out there around the terms of this deal that are on the internet. Many people saying that we're going to be paying Iran tons of money, that there really isn't like anything to say that they're not going to produce nuclear weapons, even if, this does go through. But the markets have reacted. So oil dropped off a cliff today, back down to $80 a barrel. You saw oil priced in yen drop off a cliff down to around 13,000 yen per barrel. We have seen a little bit of relief over there on the yen versus the USD, but it's back up over 160 at this point. We do anticipate tonight we should see what the rate hike is going to be there in Japan. The Bank of Japan should come out within the next few hours on their monetary policy. Everybody is expecting 25 basis points is what they are going to move. Don't know if that's going to be the case, but that is what the market is priced in at this point. You've also got the FOMC this week. Warsh, this is going to be his first meeting. A lot of people anticipating that he's going to be lowering interest rates. So if we get Japan coming up with their interest rates and we start moving down with our interest rates, that's going to squeeze those people that do have loans out and are arbitraging the float between the US dollar and our treasuries and Japan and their treasuries. So what do we need to see for the reverse carry trade to unwind? I think if we had, people think that Warsh is going to hold. That's what they've priced into the market. We saw another fantastic day in the stock market. Elon Musk making billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in a single day as the stock of SpaceX continues to climb. $2.7 trillion company as of today. At the close, another 7 or 8% up. There's a lot of memes out there. He just made Bill Gates' whole net worth in a single day, which is entertaining, which is also wild, to see he's worth $1.3 trillion on paper. And we can have a whole separate conversation about like what that actually means. Is that liquid? Could he solve world hunger? Could he do all those things? He could do a lot of good with that. However, it's illiquid. Like it's in his stock. If he sells it, it also tanks the stock. It does a bunch of things. Could he borrow against it? Sure. He's already borrowed against it in order to be able to acquire Twitter. So it needs to do well so that he can continue to be able to pay down those debts that he borrowed in order to be able to make the acquisition. So, sorry, clearing my throat a lot tonight. I'm sure my wonderful wife will bring me some tea here in a minute. She is wonderful. The tea lady, as they call her. So, the answer is I don't know. I think people have priced in a 25 basis point move from the Bank of Japan and us holding interest rates. If we see anything other than that, if we see the US lower interest rates aggressively, if we see Japan move more aggressively than the 25 basis points, or if we see the US move at all and we move down, any one of those things could cause enough pressure for the reverse carry trade to unwind at scale. Japan needs to strengthen their currency. They are at the high end of, or the low end, however you want to look at it, of what they're willing to put up with as their currency, compares to the US dollar. So they're going to have to do something. I don't know that a 25 basis point move is going to do much for them, especially if it's already priced into the market. And so I'm kind of expecting them to do more, but that's not to say that they will or won't. Thank you, my wonderful wife.
Chai for the inquiry.
Oh, chai tea tonight. She's trying to put me to sleep. So, yeah, I think we're here on the cusp of it. We've got a lot of things moving here, and a lot of people are asking, "Oh, it must be done now. The reverse carry trade's not going to happen." Blah blah blah. Look, the damage is done. The Strait of Hormuz has been shut down. Global oil reserves have gone through the floor. Tons of people, tons of nations have depleted a lot of what they had on reserve at this point. So if this conflict continues on, which again, it's just an MOU, I don't know how. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it ends, but I'm not holding my breath on this one. There's been a lot of waffling on both sides. A lot of people, saying there's a ceasefire and then there's not a ceasefire. Lebanon attacks, Israel attacks, Iran attacks Israel, we attack. They block the strait, they unblock the strait. What is an MOU? An MOU is a memorandum of understanding. So it is like an agreement to come to an agreement. It doesn't mean that there's actually any deals signed here. So that's the state of the world. We've also got Tether. That is being delisted over there by large exchanges in the EU because they're not becoming MiCA compliant. They've obviously listed another stablecoin here in the US, USAT, that they, I think, intend to be able to roll out over the long term and be compliant with all the regulations. So there are some implications for that there. However, crypto markets are up. We got Bitcoin back over 67,000. You got XRP on a tear. You got Zcash. You got XLM. Almost everybody that was in the market probably made money today. This is one of those days where you want to be in for the move. Big blockchain backer, I think he's 75% in. I like to watch his videos. Again, I'm not a TA person, so it's interesting to get his perspective on stuff. He's bullish. He thinks that we're going to continue up from here, which is nice to hear. I tend to agree with him. So, maybe there's a little sideways or pullback, but I think the direction is north from where we're at. So that's probably a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always speak with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Any opinions I share are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or any of its subsidiaries. This person's asked who? Blockchain backer. If you don't follow him over there on YouTube, highly encourage you to do so. He also posts on Twitter or X quite frequently. He's called TA, like technical analysis on all the charts, pretty much like spot on, but he also does it for a living. He literally trades for a living. So appreciate him and his content. He keeps blinders on. He really doesn't listen to anybody else, which is another thing I really appreciate about BCB. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, this is a big week. Big week. Coach JV came out and said that as well. If you guys don't follow Abs and Johnny, shout out to Good Evening Crypto. They always do a good job over there, laying it down, explaining what's going on. So that's another one if you don't follow them. The ECB is the European Central Bank. This person's asked that adjective. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know where their monetary policy is. They are obviously experiencing inflation just like everybody else. So the Fed's really in a kind of in a hard spot here. They have job numbers that are above their threshold. That means people are losing jobs. Unemployment's too high. but they also have inflation in our economy of 4% because of the oil and the situation with that. So Warsh is coming into, if they lower interest rates, that helps the job numbers, but it also increases inflation. If they raise interest rates, job numbers are going to get worse. So they have two levers. All central banks have two levers. They have M2 money supply, or how much money is circulating in the economy, and they have interest rates. You can either pull one or both of those levers. Warsh has talked about lowering our M2 money supply and lowering our interest rates at the same time. I think that they're going to be able to walk that line. And I do anticipate that the Fed is going to lower interest rates this week. So again, compressing the yield curve there. And I do think that will be enough, depending on if it's outside of the terms or what people are thinking are going to happen, that we will see some big moves in the market. I think the IPO for SpaceX was very timely. Not the top of the market last week. I think that we could see, somewhere between 78, 79, 8,000 there in the S&P. That's kind of the top end of where I think we're going to be. David Hunter, who's a very good macroeconomist, has come out and he's moved his projection up to 10,000 for the S&P 500. It's okay to have different opinions than other macroeconomists. I have my reasoning behind that. I think the reverse carry trade has a lot more leverage in the system than I think he does. He anticipates that there's not going to be any volatility prior to midterms. I think that there is going to be. I think that they need this to move now, to implement distributed ledger technology, real-time settlement, and pull us out of the hole with agentic payments and AI and the rollout of that. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Fable was removed this weekend. Anthropic released their 5.0 version of Claude, which is Fable. And apparently there were some national security risks associated with that. So they took that off the market and shut it down. The AI is just getting really good. I've started vibe coding, and this is wild. I don't know if you guys are doing this stuff yet or not, but highly encourage you to do so if you are not working with Claude and Anthropic to build out applications and do other things. So we've built software our entire time in business. I've attempted to build a lot of software over the years and spent a lot of money doing that, working with really good development teams and some not so good development teams. To be able to just tell a AI what I want it to build in Codex, and it literally build the UI and UX integrations and change the UI and do everything that I want it to do just by me asking it to do it, it's like magic. I took computer science in high school. C++ and Java, is what we coded in. And, there's tons of other more progressive languages now, Python, Solidity, WASM, Rust, a bunch of stuff, a bunch of different things that, they built blockchains with. I know enough to be dangerous. I am not a coder. My dad did that for a living. He tried to teach me. It's not, it is a foreign language to me, but to be able to use an AI to build stuff out, like this is going to completely disintermediate SaaS platforms. It's going to be wild to watch how things progress from here. So if you're not using it, if you're not figuring it out, I would highly encourage you to do so. About 4 weeks ago, Anthropic also released about 30,000 people across different organizations to be able to go in and create replicas and a repository of the information to streamline systems inside of their AI that'll create all the functionality across those businesses. So it's coming. Like if you haven't been disintermediated yet, it's going to disintermediate you. And if you're not using it to become more productive, I don't know what to tell you. The time is now to figure this out if you're not doing it. So I've rambled on long enough. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Wednesday to come hang out with me. That's an overview on the macro. I'm sure that we'll have many more questions on that tonight. Again, please like, subscribe, share on any platform that you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, X, or over here on TikTok. It goes a long way in the algorithm and is very much appreciated. All right. We've got Devade Lights. They say, Mr. Muscles. What's up, dude? Would it take years for upload assets to the XRP ledger and years for settlement in stocks markets with DTCC. Is it pos no price appreciation before DTCC goes live in July? So when you ask, would it take years? The answer is yes. They literally built out the pilot and have been running it in the background for years. They finalized Project Ion in August of 2022. It is 2026. We're almost 4 years later that they have been, you know. Oh, I said Wednesday. It's Monday. Sorry. I get my days confused. They run together. If I said Wednesday, that's my fault. So no, this is not pre-recorded. It's live every Monday and Wednesday night. I get on here and answer questions directly right off the rip. So anyway, back to the question at hand. It's already been years. They've been working on this for an extended period of time. And they've been trialing it. They've built it out in the background. Their XRP ledger has been running for 14 years with no errors. I don't know what to tell you. Like, if you think it's going to take longer, you're going to be in for a very pleasant surprise. I would put it that way. Lions 66, he says, XPay live in June. No date set yet. XRP used. Well, they are using Cross River Bank. Cross River Bank also backs Uphold. And there's a lot of hearsay that they are going to be utilizing XRP to settle. We'll see if that ends up being the case or not. You know, they bought and got and applied for a lot of the money transmitter licenses required in order to be able to operate at scale. The majority of these social media platforms have acquired those over the past 3-4 years in anticipation of, I assume, the skinny Fed master accounts, the PACE Act, and the executive order that Trump just signed here recently should allow Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, X, all of these platforms to be able to issue stablecoins and do tokenized deposits and provide a banking function and transfer value between counterparties inside those ecosystems. So there's a high likelihood, I think, that XPay will settle in XRP. Liberty Dog said there's got to be enough liquidity in XRP for that to happen. Just a caveat there. 1776, they say, Jake, blessings to you and your family. Thank you, man. God bless you and your family. What would you recommend for the next best thing to working with DAG and DWP under 10K XRP, avoid taxes and protect your wealth before I'm able to do an LLC? Hang out. I literally just did a whole webinar on this the other day. If you have 10,000 to 50,000 XRP, the different things that you should be thinking about and at which points. This person says no tax on XRP, right? All digital assets currently have capital gains tax associated with them. They are taxed as property or a capital asset here in the US. Other jurisdictions, depends on where you're at, don't have to deal with the tax implications. And some, you know, Japan just moved digital assets from a financial asset to infrastructure, or then maybe they moved them to financial assets, and now they have a 20% capital gains tax across the board there in Japan on digital assets, and that includes XRP. So yeah, Japan just went from 55 to 20. So the rest of the world's trying to catch up here. I think tax and that regime and how that's going to work with digital assets will likely be later this year. I interviewed the head of NABA, which is the North American Blockchain Association. He was on the channel a little while back, and privately we talked about, you know, things that would come up after the Clarity Act, and both insurance and tax were kind of further out in 2026 here. If we don't get the Clarity Act passed early in 2026 or midpoint in 2026, those probably get pushed into early 27 when they're going to be finalizing those things around digital assets. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think in the short term here, you're probably still going to owe taxes on your digital assets. I'm hopeful, just like everybody else, that those go away, but you got to live in the paradigm that currently exists and the current, you know, regulations around stuff. So structuring things the right way to be able to mitigate taxes would be ideal. When it comes to having 10,000 or less, I I don't think you need to worry about it a whole lot, to be honest with you. Even if we went to, let's call it, XRP goes crazy and it goes to straight to $1,000, you have $10 million with 10,000 XRP. That's a lot of money. It's enough to retire on. You could move your stuff into an LLC at that point. You could move it into a trust. You have the money to pay for it. You can take your time, especially if it does what I think, which is move to a high value and then stay there based on transaction volume moving over the network. So not overly concerned there. A lot of the reason that you want to be proactive and set things up earlier on, if you had 50 to 80,000, is if we do see $1,000 XRP in a short period of time, you now have 50 to $80 million, which is above the gift tax threshold here in the U.S. So with an LLC, you have some ways to be able to offset that or reduce that value to be able to move more of it out of your taxable estate. We've talked about this before, but you can, gift small portions of equity to other people that you care about, and then get a 409A done. And because you have multiple, minority owners on the cap table, you would get a reduction in value, even though the assets that are held by the corporation are worth more. The equity would be worth less because it's less marketable to somebody else. So that's one trick that you can use. But if you have less than that amount, you're going to be fine. Unless some of these people with the administrative repricing are correct and it goes straight to 10,000, which again, champagne problems. If that's the way that it goes, I don't think that's the way it's going to go. Would love to be wrong. Just let me say that. I would love to be wrong about that. However, I think we're probably in for a pit stop around 100, and then maybe a couple thousand once they get things to scale. So again, not financial advice. These are my opinions. Don't make any financial choices based on what I'm saying here. Take it with a grain of salt. Watch a bunch of other people. Blockchain backer thinks it's going to 10 to 13 bucks. That's kind of his high end for this cycle. So that's also been the high end for the cycle for the past 7 years, and we still haven't got there. So anyway, we'll see who ends up being right. But if you got 10,000 or less, you're probably okay to just hang out for a little while, and you will have plenty of time to set things up on the other side. Legend, what's up, dude? Has it that if a Latino owns crypto on a U.S. platform, do they have to pay U.S. taxes? Will the hash rate rise along with XRP, or will it be after the Clarity Act? Will the famous reverse carry trade happen on Sunday, the 21st? I don't know when it's going to happen. I think it kind of has to happen in the middle of the week. Could happen Sunday night. I've talked about that before. They're going to have to act pretty quickly when that occurs in order to move things around and dig us out of the hole, because it's going to be a credit crisis when that takes place. I do think that they're going to have to roll the BlackRock ETF pretty quickly. When that happens, Evernorth will have to go live. There'll be a lot of people driving demand very quickly into XRP. So if it happened in the middle of the week, then they could do that very quickly. If it happens on a Sunday, they would have to do it on the Monday. I don't think it's going to happen over on a Saturday on a weekend. But again, I don't know when it'll take place. But markets are not open during that period, so hard for that to take place during that time. If you own crypto and you are in Mexico or another jurisdiction and it's on a U.S. platform, you have no nexus to the U.S. You're going to be taxed in your jurisdiction wherever you reside. Most countries have residency tax basis, whereas the U.S. is citizenship based. So even if you're a U.S. citizen, you live abroad, you're still going to get taxed here. Just be aware of that, right? And you'll have double tax treaties, and it's normally whichever jurisdiction has the higher tax you'll have to pay in, and then it offsets your tax in the other jurisdiction. So if you're in Mexico or Spain or one of those areas, as long as you're not a U.S. citizen, you could be holding it on a U.S.-based platform, and your finders can be taxed in your jurisdiction. Will the hash rate rise along with XRP? Thank you. Well, I haven't drank the tea yet because it was hot. My wife, always trying to take care of me. She's a nice lady. Okay. Hash rate. Yes, it would rise because, well, Depends on the volume on the network and how much liquidity is in XRP. I'd have to think about that a little bit more before I could give you a definitive answer. And then I don't know the date for the reverse carry trade, like I mentioned, no more than anybody else. I just do see it imminently on the horizon here. Mr. William, Mr. Kilgore, he says, regards, Jake, some are saying that XLM will be used instead of XRP for various things, such as tokenized stocks, as they are doing. What advantage does XRP have over XLM? So they are a very similar code base. Jed McCaleb was a founder of both. He stepped away from Ripple and OpenCoin and started XLM or Stellar. I don't know that they black holed the origin account, so they may be able to produce more. They have burned half the supply. It is the primary premise for XLM is more of a peer-to-peer payment platform versus XRP is more of an enterprise payment platform. So back-end settlement for institutions, markets. You could have XLM win out on the FX market, or not at the FX, but the Swift market. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but that seems to be more of an institutional play. But they have had pilots. Both of them have had pilots with Western Union over the years. So I think that XLM could be used, and I do think it will be used for peer-to-peer payments, Stripe integration, merchant services. When we talked to Bain, they were consulting and building in Hyperledger Bosu with a lot of different parties that they were working with on the merchant services and peer-to-peer payment side as a consultant. So both will be used. Both will do very well, in my opinion, over the long term. The other thing that matters as far as like US laws and regulation is antitrust laws. There needs to look as though there's competitors in the market. According to both Jed and the founders of XRP, they had a falling out, and they separated ways, and that's when Jed went to go start that other deal. But if there wasn't something that looked as though it was a competitor in another company in the space, there could be a monopoly for Ripple, and therefore, they'd be violating antitrust laws, and the US government would try to break them up anyway. So I think that there's something there around that. Tokenization of stocks on XLM isn't going to start until 2027. We know that they're going to be tokenizing NASDAQ, NYSE, and many other exchanges here this year in 2026. So could they settle stocks on XLM? Potentially. Ondo also has tokenized stocks, and they already settle through the XRP ledger for their treasuries. So I would assume they would do the same for their tokenized stocks that they're providing internationally as well. You've got Ondo partnering with one of the large exchanges, Securitize partnering with the other for tokenization. Pretty confident that they end up on the XRP ledger. But again, I don't know if that origin account on XLM has been black holed or not. I'd have to do more research. But that's one of the big value propositions for XRP is nobody can freeze XRP. Nobody can, claw XRP back. Once it's sent, it's gone. It's sent. Issued assets on the chain can be clawed back, and same thing on XLM with Sorban smart contracts. So we know that there can be smart contracts rolled out on the XRP ledger that don't impact the speed and cost to be able to transact because XLM's already done it. There could be something to them piloting that and kind of forging the path forward in case there were mistakes that then could be rehypothecated on the XRPL after those bugs and issues were worked out. So anyway, a lot of large companies will invest in companies that have a progressive technology or a new iteration in a market to be able to see all the pitfalls that they go through so that they can then implement that on whatever they're doing and navigate that, and so that they don't have the same mistakes or issues. So I think that there's a lot to unpack there, but over the long term, I think both will be successful. Jostin 100, he says, hey Jake, I believe in the domino theory. Me too, dude. One thing that bothers me is why would any administration allow for markets to crash? We could be looking at mass homelessness, suicides, riots, etc. Why did they let the crash happen in 08? Why did they let the crash happen in 2001 or 2000 from the dot-com bubble? Why did they let the 1929 crash happen? look, and there's plenty of what you just discussed there on the other side of all of those market events. 1987 was another one. So all that being said, greed, greed is one. Mismanagement, problem, reaction, solution, to be able to roll out new things so that they can, pivot, and they give the public a reason why they're doing things and why they absolutely needed to adopt something. I think a lot of these have been manufactured over that duration of time to allow the Fed to gain more power. And I think we're kind of seeing the unwind of that here. They're backed into a corner. I think the Fed will be transitioned out over some duration of time, but until they are, you still got to comply with the IRS and everything else that exists today, right? I'm hopeful, like everybody else is, for that. I would love for the Treasury to issue our currency, and I think we'll get there. I think this is just a controlled demolition of that and change of power. So, all that being said, I think it'll be a V bottom. I don't think it'll be an extended, depression like we would have had if they didn't have this technology to be able to roll out. I think that they've been waiting on AI to get into a position where it can also benefit the economy at scale and produce significant GDP and actual growth so that we can grow our way out of the hole. There's a lot of things that are culminating right now for significant growth in GDP and for markets to rebound very quickly if we did see a liquidity crisis. So, if you were the administration and you knew that that was going to be an outcome that was inevitable either way, you would try to position things and make sure that it was at a time when you could navigate that correctly and, hopefully rebound before midterms. That's kind of how I'm thinking it goes down. Till's posted over here. We talk about the mastermind, but if you want to go check it out, we talk about a lot that we talk about here, and then much more there in the group. Provide some additional information that's not shared publicly. We do private deals. We have, more real and life events than pretty much any other community in crypto. If you do want to go check that out, we would love to see you in there. All you have to do is go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, #1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 there. Month to month, no contract, cancel anytime. Lots of new stuff happening there for course material and other things that we're helping out people at Carbon One and higher. Rye Dog, he says, "What's up, legend? What's up, dude?" He says, "Let's go." I love it. It should be. I think it's going to be a hot girl summer. I think it's going to be good for a lot of people. Brooks, he says, "Legend. I was neutral about last year's price prediction. You were the only one, and people were blasting you. This year, all the folks that slammed you are now predicting high prices." I know, man. Look, I'm steadfast in my conviction. I've told you guys my thesis and why I think things are going to play out. That hasn't changed. The circumstances around it have already started to unfold this year, which pretty uncannily to how I've described them over the past 2 years. So, I'm, again, steadfast in what I think is going to occur. I haven't really pivoted. Other people, and I don't want to say that that's easy either. It's easy to get beat down. There's a lot of people that are negative that will say, you were wrong about this, or this didn't happen, or this, that, and the other. I'm batting about 700. I'm not perfect, right? I'm not batting 1,000, but I'm doing pretty good. There's a lot of things that I've called accurately, and there's been some things that I've missed on, and that's okay. I don't think anybody's perfect. But the outcome that I see looks inevitable. I don't see how they can pull themselves or us out of this situation that we find ourselves in with the debt and the way things are structured without moving to this technology. And that requires significantly more liquidity in these assets, period. Like there's not another way around it. It doesn't matter how many times you can use it, especially if it becomes pristine collateral. So, for a lot of it to be locked up, there's not going to be a ton of it out there to be able to transact and move money around. And for that reason, I think it needs to be a significantly higher price in order to be able to facilitate that. So, I try not to watch a bunch of other people. Like I said, I watch Blockchain Backer. Most of the other stuff I watch is more economics, like people outside of crypto. And the other reason I like Blockchain Backer is he doesn't just look at crypto. He looks at stocks, he looks at M2 money supply, he looks at the VIX, he looks at a bunch of other metrics outside of this asset class in order to be able to build his thesis on where we're at in the market and the cycle. And so I do the same thing. You know, I'm looking at macroeconomics, I'm looking at geopolitical conflicts, I'm looking at regime changes, I'm looking at regulation and how things are working across the world and how that's going to affect things. And I come on here and kind of explain my thesis around that and why I think certain things are going to happen. So I don't tend to watch a bunch of the other content creators. I did early on. I will say, you know, when I first got into crypto, that is how I got into crypto. I watched a bunch of other people on YouTube and other platforms, and that helped me, you know, educate myself. They provide a lot of really good information. So if you're new, I encourage people to watch multiple channels, you know, get your information from multiple people, and then come up with your own thesis, you know, thinking critically through things. So, but yeah, it's interesting to see the pivot now that there's momentum returning to the market. B Mark, my man, he says, Mr. Jake Mickle said R3 Corda is dead. What's up? The truth is, laugh out loud. You know, so Mickle doesn't have the same experience with R3. You know, we had something that we worked on with them that I have NDAs around that I can't really talk about. I try to touch on things that I can discuss. I'm not aware that Mickle ever had that interaction or worked with them in that capacity. So, and when I talked to, just for Mickle's, you know, to kind of advocate for him, when you talk to the majority of the other people in crypto, they say the same thing. They really haven't heard anything from R3 since like 2019, 2018. And so there's a lot of reason to believe that it just wasn't successful. They are still around. They're still in business. They have some pretty deep integrations. If you want to go look at Crunchbase, you can see all the banks that were their initial investor. And you're going to be surprised by who's on their cap table. So for them to not be successful after all of those banks invested in them, I think is very unlikely. And yeah, maybe they do get acquired by somebody larger than them. I've always thought that R3 would probably be adopted. I mean, they built out Project Ion with the DTCC, so I think that they're going to be making money using that. And then pretty confident that they have some pretty significant integrations for stable coins and other private environments that they've developed with other institutions and sovereign nations. So I do not think they're dead. And Mickle works at Digital Ascension Group, if you guys didn't know that. He is the head of our B2B enterprise on the wealth management side. He was an advisor for an extended period of time. Very sharp, intelligent individual. That was one of the reasons we got along. And he works here. We jam on stuff, but it's okay that we have different opinions on things. I actually enjoy that at our company. I don't think I know everything, and I want other smart people around me poking holes or providing their opinion. And Mickle definitely does that, so I appreciate him. Solace, hey, how's it going? They say, what percentage of your convictions have to do with the information you hear in those conversations with certain people about XRP? 80%? I mean, there's probably 20% of my conviction that was built on, you know, publicly available information. But the level of conviction I have now is highly predicated on conversations with that I've had with other counterparties over the years. Brad Gallinghouse, he said, say Jake from France. Huge follower since day zero. Awesome, dude. Thank you for the support and the appreciation in the super chat. He says, for the DTCC using XRP as settlement, need price appreciation. Is BlackRock the only way for a supply shock? Blessings. I don't think they're the only way for a supply shock, but I think that they will be involved in the supply shock when it occurs. You need significant amounts of demand moving onto the exchanges in a very short period of time to be able to drive the price to where it needs to be. We had huge inflows on the XRP ETFs today. I don't know if you guys saw that or not. I think today was one of the largest inflows as far as like people buying XRP. It was like $58 million worth of XRP bought today through the ETFs. So pretty big amount. Like I've said before, I only think that there's, maybe a couple 100 million left on the OTC desk and dark pools. We saw some of that volume make its way over to the exchanges today. So if we saw, a couple 100 million, billion dollars worth of inflows on a single day, you would absolutely see the price gap up. There's not really a way around that. So yeah, I don't think that's the only way, but I think it will definitely be a marker for when things are really cooking. They also say thoughts on Europe delisting $175 billion worth of USDT from all major exchanges today. I don't think it was today. They just said that that's coming. I don't think that they gave a date on that. That was CoinDesk or one of the other large publications that put that out. They are not compliant with MiCA or MiCA, however you want to say the regulations there in the EU. And so therefore, a lot of the larger exchanges are delisting that in the not too distant future. And that will definitely cause a supply shock, or well, not necessarily. Well, I think it'll cause a supply shock for XRP because I think that that'll be the main asset that they start using to settle because of the DEX that's built into the network. But separate of that, that is a lot of liquidity that's going to be moving off of exchanges. If you guys haven't read the Shane Ellis theory, would encourage you to go check that out. He talks about Bitfinex going illiquid when Tether's delisted or removed from their ability to use it, and how their volume for all of those transactions would move over to XRP, pushing the price to $500 plus. I'm going to butcher the name. They say it's a zigging giant 5115. They say, hey, Jake, proud Beyond Mastermind member. Awesome, dude. Glad to have you in the group. Thank you for the support, being part of that community. I have seen that the DTCC will settle with traditional rails for the pilot and October full rollout. Thoughts? They could. I would counter that argument, not necessarily argument, that comment with what was stated by the president of NASDAQ last year at Swell. So I was there, front row, got to listen to her and Monica Long talk. She said that the first place that they will be utilizing distributed ledger technology is to settle the back end of the stock market for settlement and reconciliation of all the trades. So if they were going to use traditional rails to do that, I don't know why the president of NASDAQ would say something different in a public forum where she could be quoted. Whatever they put out, again, the LLMs, I don't know where you got that information from. It could have been from, publications. So I'm not going to jump straight to conclusions here. LLMs are great for a lot of things. They scour the internet and they find information and they bring that back to you in a concise way. I'm going to go based on what I heard the president of NASDAQ say over pretty much anything else you can find online. Maybe she meant later. Maybe she means in October. But pretty confident she said Q3 of 2026 in that same conversation. So that would be before October. Rick Johnson, good to see you, dude. He says, if the BOJ doesn't raise interest rates enough to start the reverse carry trade, then sad. Warsh holds, then no reverse carry trade. What's next? Brilliant. We need hope. Again, both those things are priced into the market. I think that Warsh is going to lower interest rates. This person says tokenized stocks on Lobster Wallet. Oh, it was deleted. I can't speak to Lobster Wallet's credibility or its functionality as a platform because I don't use it. And the reason I don't use it is I had a client scammed out of about $30 million on Lobster Wallet because he thought he bought XRP and it was fake XRP on Lobster Wallet. So if you are using that platform, just be aware there are malicious actors over there. I don't know how they could have implemented KYB, KYC, and many other things since that happened. That was years ago. But after that, I just decided that that wasn't something that I was going to participate in. So I'm just saying, do your due diligence on stuff. Make sure that you're being careful out there. There's there's a lot of malicious actors, and until we have, you know, a regulatory body that is, and the FBI is going after a bunch of crypto crime right now, globally. They've already recovered significant amounts of money that have been scammed from people. So I, you know, again, not saying that Lobster Wallet's going to be one of those things, or that they even have that intention. It may just be other people, you know, on their platform that are providing or scamming people. So again, just do due diligence. Make sure you're using credible stuff if you're going to participate in tokenized real world assets. I still think we're very close to the reverse carry trade. Circling back to Mr. Johnson's comment, I'm still in the camp that I think we need significantly higher prices for XRP in the next 13, 15 days here in order for them to use it in the capacity that I think it's, I think it's going to be used for, to settle the back into the stock market. Squid Gaming says oil below 13K, Japan bond back down to 1.26. How can the reverse carry trade happen? If we see conflict go back the other direction there in that jurisdiction and the MOU doesn't hold up, would be very easy, because again, now the market's priced in the other direction that it is going to be successful. If it's not, I think it would catch a lot of people off guard. KT baby, good to see you, ma'am. She says mint gum works like a charm to clear your throat. Interesting. I will have to try that out. Thank you for the tip. We are on the 95-yard line. I think we're on like the 98-yard line, like 3 feet from gold type thing. Kegs, they say price appreciation on XRP and XLM and HBAR by the end of the year. What percentage if everything plays out? Carry trade, Clarity Act, reverse carry trade, BlackRock tokenization. For all three, don't think we need the Clarity Act for XRP. I've been very loud about that, I guess, in comparison to other people. I think that I differ on that opinion from many other people in the space. They think that there's no way that we're going to see price appreciation. I've continued to tell you guys that I don't think it's going to happen before midterms or the August recess. You know, Patrick Witt and many others are advocating that it'll happen by July 4th. As you know, Eleanor Terrick came out with, literally logistically impossible at this point for that to take place. It'd be great to see it. You know, again, if there is a catalyst, if there is a reason that Congress has to get something done, they will act and get it done. We've seen them do that before, but outside that circumstance, I don't know that we're going to get the Clarity Act in the near future. So the main thing around the Clarity Act that I do think would be beneficial for the industry doesn't involve stable coins. I think the OCC is going to regulate that, and people are going to have guidelines on the yield. The CFTC and the SEC have already given their guidance around which one of these tokens are commodities versus securities. The piece of the Clarity Act that matters the most to me, and where I think the industry will actually garner benefit, is around DeFi. If they can define the rules around how institutions can leverage smart contracts and DeFi applications, and who's the authority, who's responsible, the guidelines around insurance and custody and all of that, which I don't think they have worked out. I can tell you, you know, in conversations with the regulators, they're still really just kind of learning what this technology is and how it works. So for them to be able to regulate it, I don't know that they're in a position to do that. I think by the end of the year, they will be. I think that they're going to be able to, you know, tokenize stocks, and they'll see the benefit and the efficiencies that that creates in real-time settlement and treasury management and many things on that side. And then as they roll out more amendments on the XRPL that already has all of the digital identity credentials, permission domains, permission DEX, oracles, price oracles, all that stuff built into it, then, you know, they'll be able to do liquidity pools, borrow lend, the pseudo accounts, the automated market makers, all of that. I could see, you know, if we see the regulation from the Clarity Act rolled out by the end of the year, if we don't get the Clarity Act this year and it pushes into 2027, which is possible with midterms and everything else that's happening, I don't know that we'll see broad adoption for DeFi and institutional applications until 2027, which also means that we're probably not going to see tokenization of derivatives until 2027, if that's the case, because that's the unlock for XRP to see significantly higher prices is tokenization of the derivatives market. So that would be the one thing that the Clarity Act would. I'll say this. I think that we could see a 3 and 4 digit XRP without the Clarity Act. I don't think we're going to see a 5-digit XRP until the Clarity Act is passed and they can tokenize derivatives. And then you asked about XLM and HBAR. I think both of those will have price appreciation because of adoption, especially for agentic payments and other things there. HBAR has rolled out a really good kit to be able to allow for agentic payments and tokenization and provenance on their chain. You've got T54 kind of blazing the trail on a KYA. So they have KYC, know your customer. They have KYB, which is know your business. And then last is KYA, which is know your agent. So they're building out the digital identity for agents at scale and who the beneficial owner is and being able to track all that back and have a provenance on chain. And we talk about a lot of this and way more over there in the mastermind. Again, if you want to stay on top of this stuff, would highly encourage people to join that community. DP, they say, on your tokenization video, you mentioned the BIS will make XRP a tier 1 asset in Q2. We have 15 days. Where are you guessing this? You still haven't posted your source. The source has been posted a couple times in the chat here and in the mastermind. It is from the BIS's page over there on Twitter. It's from a while back that they stated that they had they were going to designate, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and XRP, and give them designations here in Q2. So if you want to go check that out over there on the BIS's page, you're more than welcome to do that, or you can join the mastermind and it's shared freely in there. But yeah, they do have 15 days to come out with those rulings. You were exactly right. Adam G33, he said, you've said to never tell people how much XRP you have, advice for navigating telling friends and family about coming into money, post price appreciation, who to tell, what to tell them, dollar amount versus XRP held, etc. I think it's on a need to know basis, to be honest with you. So a lot of people are, this is actually a really good question, and this is something that everybody's going to deal with. So how do you navigate that? You need a system and rules in place for who gets money is really what it comes down to, and for what reasons you're willing to provide money. We help clients draft a family constitution or a family charter with their core values, mission statement, principles, beliefs, all of that where it's documented, and you build in governance on how people can access capital and for what reasons. If you have those rules, you have a financial committee and you have a family board, even if it's just you to start with, and maybe a few of the professionals that you're working with to navigate this, that's what I would do. I would put systems in place, and telling them how much you have, you probably don't need to do that. Just say, hey, I made this investment, it's done pretty well. Really, the 2 calls that you need to make well, there's probably 3: your CPA, your attorney, and your spouse. What order you make those calls in, it's up to you. A lot of people would say spouse first. That's probably the best way to go if you don't want to get hit over the head, male or female. But all that being said, you probably already had conversations with family members and friends. They're going to understand what's happened, and they're likely going to come ask you for money for a variety of reasons. They're also going to use psychology to make you feel bad, or try to take advantage of you, or stir you up emotionally. Try to stay calm during that and just say, hey, look, this is important to me. I'm a steward of this money for my family moving forward. And we have to have rules and procedures in order to make sure that this is, around for multiple generations. I want to leave a legacy for this family. I want to make sure that my kids and my kids' kids and kids' kids are taken care of and have opportunities that I didn't. And I'm able to do that with this money. So we need to be good stewards of that. And for that purpose, we have to have rules around how we operate. And I'm implementing those right now. So if you don't have them in place, just say I'm working on that. I'll circle back with you once I have that in place. And depending on, what you need the capital for, if it meets the requirements and the governance that we have for our family, then you be able to access that liquidity. If it doesn't meet those parameters, then unfortunately, it's likely that the financial committee or the family board will not approve you taking that money. And it will cause frictions. You will lose friends. You will lose connection with family members. Part of this, it's not a fun part of it by any means. But if you want this to last, I mean, there's tons of NFL players and people that have large families. You could even look at Shaq. Shaq's been able to navigate this well. He still took care of his family members, but was taking care of a bunch of his friends. And he had a stern talking to by one of his coaches or another one of the advisors that he had. And, he changed some things up after that. He set up a corporation that his mom and dad worked at. He paid him out of that. He's navigated it well. So if you want to go listen to a talk that Shaq has put out on how he's navigated things, I think that would be beneficial for people. And again, we share a lot of this information there in the mastermind and go over, we share videos, we share a lot of, good ways to navigate that. But at a high level, that's what I would tell them, and it's how I would navigate the situation. We are about an hour in, so I'm going to go all the way to the bottom of the chat, and I'm going to work my way back up through the super chats. If I miss your super chat, I apologize. We will get to it Wednesday. All you do is send it back to us over there. Just email it to info@digitalfamilyoffice.io, and they will get it over to my wife, and she will print it out and put it right here on my desk for me to answer. We also, I didn't talk about this, but the name here reminded me of it. Fox acquiring Roku for $22 billion today. I don't know if you guys saw that or not. That's a big deal. If you can't beat them, buy them. So I don't know how many of you will still continue to watch Roku, but I have multiple Roku TVs. So it impacts me. Ryu, they say, hey Jake, Japan kid that kicked the can, Israel's stable, price up so bullish, bottom still possible before moon. If so, when? 2% wallet post price. Love to be on DAG. So basically you're asking, is there going to be more volatility and are we going to see more downside in the market? It's possible. Based on what blockchain backers posted, and again, I'm just speaking about him. A lot of people will point to me in their stuff, so I'm going to talk about BCB. We've reached the point where 10.5 million Bitcoin are at a loss. In previous cycles, that has been the bottom. So I kind of anticipate that we've already bottomed out here. I know people want it to go lower. They want to get it under $1. They want to buy things at a cheaper price. If we see Tether unwind and things play out, the reverse carry trade, sure. But in a liquidity crisis, I don't know how capable you're going to be of buying. So I just continue to dollar cost average. Again, not financial advice. You should do what's best for you. We are going to be deploying a strategy here in the near future that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy over there at Digital Ascension Group and DAG Wealth, where you'll be able to park cash and we'll algorithmically average you into the market based on some proprietary algorithms for trading we have. So if you did want to average in at the lowest prices, that will do that for you automatically so that you don't have to pick bottoms. It just averages you into the market as the candlesticks move the right way. And we should be rolling that out hopefully by the end of the month. Kingdom Connected. They say, hey Jake, haven't met you yet, but I look to that day. Thank you for your faith and obedience. Your leadership XRP will be epic. God has said, I will be wealthy. He will do for me, if not for, he will do thee for me, if not for anyone else. Not pride here, just growing conviction. Be encouraged. Appreciate you, dude. I pray frequently, multiple times a day, and ask for wisdom and discernment in order to, keep the faith and keep doing what I'm doing. Sometimes it gets rough, just like it does for anybody else. But I do feel called to do this. I've sat down 5 years ago and had a heart to heart, and what I got back was not what I was expecting. But I've tried to live that truth every single day since then, and it's led me here. And I think you're right. I think that a lot of people are going to be impacted extremely positively. And that's also a correlation I found across the majority of the people I've interacted with in XRP is they are faith-based. They have a relationship with the Lord. And so, again, appreciate your kind words and conviction. And again, I don't see it as arrogance. I'm sure that he's put something on your heart to change lives and create value and impact a lot of people. And I think you're going to be in a position to be able to do that because of this opportunity. So congratulations for being here. And I look forward to working with you in the not too distant future. Matt, Mr. Witt, he says, thanks for all that you do. Hope all is well. What is the point of price predictions? I feel as if it just discredits a very justified movement. Well, I'll say it this way. If I didn't come on here and talk about this as an opportunity and what I see in the market and the theory that I have, I can tell you that there's been a lot of people that have reached out that are excited about this opportunity and would not have found this had they not found the videos that I put out and the information that I put out there. And maybe they would have, irrespective. Like if you're meant to find something, you're going to find it anyway. The comments that have been made to me, and I don't mean to sound egotistical or bigoty or any of that. Again, I feel called to do this. Is some people just resonate with the way that I talk about things. They feel like it's logical, they understand it, and it provides a sense of credibility to this that other people don't with the price predictions that they put out. Because it's not just like a flip of the switch. Like there has to be actual events that take place. There has to be catalysts. There's multiple things that have to culminate for an outcome to take place for XRP to get to a substantially higher price. It's not just whoopee, they turn it on. And I think people want to understand that. There's a lot of people out there. I'll give you an example. And this person wasn't wrong. They just didn't have a way to be able to communicate it where somebody with credibility would take it into consideration. So Grant Cardone, he does a call-in show, and there was a gentleman that called in there, and he told him that XRP was going to $10,000, and was screaming and like he was excited, right? And he had a high level of conviction, but he couldn't explain how or why that would take place. It was just, it's going to happen. You should buy it. I'm pretty logical and analytical. If somebody were to tell me that, I would have a lot of questions, and then also be asking them where and how they heard that and how they figured that out or what would cause it. And if you can't explain that to people in a way that is understandable, they're probably going to dismiss it. So I do think that your point is correct. I think there's a lot of price predictions out there with no backing or theory on how it actually transpires, and that does discredit the industry in a meaningful way. And I'm here to do my job in order to kind of shed a light on the actual events that would have to culminate and for this to take place. And a lot of them have already kind of been checked off the list here. We're just waiting on the grand finale. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, or if what you had was really even a question or more just a comment, but that's my feelings on it. Kale, Mr. Reeves, he says, 100,000 future legends unite to take 10,000 XRP off of the market in one day. I mean, here's the deal. If retail was going to be able to drive this price to significantly higher levels, they would have already done it. Ripple has done a good job of maintaining price stability in the market in order to be able to trial this. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. A lot of people would be upset with that. But had they not had the treasury and a way to be able to maintain price stability to trial this correctly on the market, I don't think we would see the adoption and the price appreciation that will eventually transpire. So, even if retail came in a swarm, I mean, we saw $58 million move in through the ETFs today, and it moved at 7%. It's got to be a lot of capital at this point. I mean, the total market cap of XRP is, I don't know what it is today. It's 100 billion at $1.25, so 125 billion. That's still a lot. Like it's a lot of inflows in order to move it one direction to the other. What's available supply and circulating supply are also two very different metrics and things out there. But you can imagine that a lot of people are also taking profits. Algorithmic trading protocols and many other things were averaging out if they bought lower here in order to be able to buy back when they saw the dip, which is what we've just seen here, to move back down. And I'm sure, some of our algorithms that we've got on the RIA side have taken profits and also re-entered the market in order to continue to aggregate additional XRP. That's been performing really well for the clients that we have on the wealth management side that have allocated to that product inside their IRA. So if you have an IRA, self-directed, SEP, traditional, Roth, whatever you got, and you do want to hold digital assets in it, or you already hold digital assets in it, and you want a way to produce additional XRP inside that product or that wrapper, you can reach out. You can go to digitalwealthpartners.net, go to the contact us form, and our advisors, I'm sure, would love to talk to you about, how that works. You probably have a ton of questions, want to do your due diligence, which I appreciate, but they're happy to have that conversation. God is good 1000x. I love it, dude. He says, IMF, BIS, OM, FIF have so many documents that talked about a shared ledger, the shared ledger, regulated liability network, internet of value, XRP. Yeah, if you look at Smoke does fantastic research over there on Twitter. He's put out a lot of things over the years with a lot of that documentation. He's just a fantastic researcher. Him and I differ on opinions on how we get there, which is cool. I don't mind that because we still get to the same place. But if you do want to look at a lot of that, SMQKE is his moniker over there on X, where he posts a lot of that documentation. And again, I would point to the fact that the IMF wrote a white paper about the exchange rate peg back in 2014, right before XRP was rebranded from Ripples to XRP. The abbreviation that they used in that document was XRP. So if you want to draw a conclusion, that's up to you. I think that's pretty obvious what they're doing. Wager Wars, they say, in a previous live, you mentioned a few important dates coming up on the near-term horizon: 6/28, 7/13, 7/18, and 10/1. Can you please give a bit more insight into those dates and what to expect to come/happen? So 6/28 is go live for 24/5 for both the DTCC and SWIFT and their settlement. 7/13 is the beginning phase for the pilot program and beta for tokenization of the stock market, mainly ETFs on the different exchanges, for them to be trading 24/5 in a tokenized manner. And again, back-end settlement, real-time settlement is different than the tokenization component. Real-time settlement and reconciliation to move to T+0 does not require tokenized stocks or equities. It's kind of a precursor. You would need that in place in order to be able to tokenize stocks and allow them to operate in their fullest capacity. But then you'll be able to have, fractionalized shares, no stock splits, price feeds through the oracles and many other things to be able to have tighter spreads on stuff. There's a lot of benefit to tokenizing the stock market itself. 7/18, I'm not sure on. I'd have to go look and see what that one was. And then 10/1 is going to be full live tokenization for all equities, including regular stocks at the beginning of Q4. So, Ondo is tokenizing stocks, Securitize tokenizing stocks. They have the multi-purpose token on the XRPL. So for those that don't know what that is, this is another huge benefit to the XRPL in comparison to other networks. A multi-purpose token you could issue share classes with that had different rights to them, like voting rights, preferred shares, common shares, different types of stock. And they would all still be convertible one-to-one, unlike an NFT, which is a non-fungible token. This is a fungible token that just has different rights based on which class of token is issued, which is a big deal for the tokenization of stocks themselves on the XRP ledger and private markets in particular. Sydney, they say, Bank of Japan, what's your prediction? 25 basis points, 50 basis points? What will that do to US stocks? I think they're probably going to do what they said. I think that they're probably going to go 25 basis points. If I had to put a percentage on it, I'm 60% that they're going to go 25 basis points, 40% that it's going to be more than that. And reason being is if they anticipate the US lowering interest rates later this week, that would weaken the dollar against the yen, even though they would strengthen the yen against the dollar with their move. And so it would push the yen versus the USD in the right direction for them. I think we're going to need another catalyst. I think we're going to need an oil spike. I think we're going to need the deal to fall through. I guess they could still use, the situation with Iran as a scapegoat for raising interest rates higher because of the inflation in their economy. Yeah, I think it's a big week. I think that there's going to be, so, normally my wife says I shouldn't go tinfoil hat, so I'm not going to go tinfoil hat, but I'm going to get a little woo-woo for you guys. There's a conjunction on Wednesday this week. Venus and Uranus. Uranus is the planet of surprises. Venus tends to be more like wealth type stuff. So there should be some type of monetary surprise, potentially, that happens on or around Wednesday. So could that be the Fed lowers interest rates aggressively? Potentially. Could it be the Bank of Japan moves more today and then we move then? Could it be something else that's completely a black swan that nobody sees coming? All of those things are on the table. Could it be nothing, right? Does all astrology even have anything to do with anything? I don't know. I take everything with a grain of salt. I look at all of it. But I feel like things are shifting here. I don't know if you guys feel that way or not, but I feel like momentum is returning to the market, and there's a lot of things that are cracking, and then we're likely going to see some issues unfold, and they're going to have to implement this stuff. And for them to use it on 628 in the way that I think they anticipate using it, I think we need substantially higher prices for them. Is that this week? Is it next week? Who knows? I don't have the answer on that. But I do think that some of these tokens, in particular XRP, need to be a substantially higher price by the 28th of this month. Troy, he says, Jake, thanks for being our front man. And we got your back. Thank you, dude. I appreciate that. I want to say this. I really do appreciate it. It's not like I'm just saying that. Nothing that we have built and the mastermind community and all the products and services that we create mean nothing if you guys don't actually want to use them. Everything that we have, I've solved all these problems for myself, and to be able to create a solution that's democratizing access and other people can participate in is the most fulfilling thing I think that I've ever done career-wise. Wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you for the support, being a client, working with us, and advocating for us as well. He says, DWP client, Carbon One, mastermind member. We must be the densest concentration of holders in the world. Should we be worried about being targeted by the bad guys? We're doing everything we can to be SOC 2 compliant and make sure that all the information that we're working with is on the up and up, and that everything's segregated, encrypted. The assets are at Anchorage, so they're the highest level of custody. BlackRock holds their assets there. We're doing everything we can to do it the right way and make sure that even if we are targeted, there's little to no way that people can, actually take your stuff. We're going to continue to build out additional security measures over time to make that even more robust. And a lot of that is currently underway with some of the stuff that we're doing with AI. And yeah, you will be. People will become a target post price appreciation, and even prior to price appreciation. Many people, have been targeted by scammers, phishing accounts, all kinds of stuff. So again, just be careful out there. Make sure you understand what you're doing. If you have an opportunity to get your assets into institutional custody and away from your own ability to mess things up, we provide one of those options that's in the market. There's lots of options in the market. I think that we have, in ours meets my 5-prong test for institutional custody. There are other people out there that do some of the things that we do. And again, we don't advocate that everybody puts everything with us. We think that we're an option in the market. We provide a really good service at a very fair price. And, I think people appreciate that. So you being one of those. So I appreciate you working with us. And we've got private security. We've got cybersecurity. We have a bunch of other people that we're going to be rolling out, providing as resources as things kind of transpire here for those that want it. Right Invest, they say, my Jake avatar voice. Thoughts on that's really good. That guy's name is Jake in avatar. Thoughts on 15K plus holdings XRP, continue to stack, time to speak with you, or not just yet? Not just yet. I think you're okay to just continue to stack XRP at that amount, somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000 in total portfolio value. And maybe even a little bit less than that if you want to be a little more proactive. But prior to that amount, I don't know that we can provide you a ton of benefit. And I don't know that the cost that we charge justifies the means, right? I try to be real with people on that. That doesn't make us money. But I genuinely want people to do what's best for them and their family. And I want to make sure that our team also keeps that at the center of what we're doing. We want to provide services and products that people actually need. And if you're not ready for those things or suitable for that, then don't worry about it until you are, right? The money would be better spent continuing to, stack XRP than it would be, paying for something that we provide. So anyway, if you're at higher levels, sure. There's lots of things that we can do to help you navigate the space and value that we can provide, and the cost might justify the means there. But for the amount that you mentioned, I think, wait till some price appreciation, and then we would love to work with you. Thrilled or killed? It's an interesting name. You say, will Clarity Act pass by July 4th? If not, when? No, it will not pass by July 4th. I'd love to, I'll say this too. I would love to be wrong on that. I would love to see a catalyst that forces Congress to move quickly and get things across the line. The other piece of that is I don't want the DeFi piece of it to go poorly and it to be regulated in a way that causes that not to be adopted by the banks and institutions. So I would rather than be a little bit more methodical about that and get it right. Brad Garlinghouse has talked about, don't let perfect be the blocker from progress. If it's regulated the wrong way, it's going to be really rough. If there's too much red tape and oversight, it's going to be very difficult to see proliferation of that. And it's really going to reduce the amount of protocols and networks that can actually be adopted by the institutions. I think that's going to happen anyway. But I would like to see, we all think it's going to be a multi-chain world, and I would agree with that. So, the more competition that's out there, that's better for the consumer base and the institutions themselves. And the more people that can meet the standards or requirements that are set up, the better. But you still need some stringent stuff to make sure that there's oversight, there's accountability, there's disclosures. There's a lot of stuff around that needs to be done the right way. And I don't know that the bill's drafted the right way as of yet. But it could pass later this year. It could be, if they get it done before August recess, I'd really like to see that. I just don't know that that's going to happen with the SAVE Act continuing to go back and forth. They got the PACE Act there. They have some other things that they need to get through. You're going to have to meet the filibuster. You're going to have to convince at least 7 to 9 Democrats to vote for the changes in the bill, which is going to be hard to do because they stripped out a bunch of the recommendations by the Democrats on the bill. They barely got it to pass, to be the vote, to get it to the filibuster. And once they do that, then they have to pass it in the Senate. It then has to go back to the House and be reconciled with them because they passed a different form of the bill. And then after that, it would go to the president's desk to be signed. So they just move slow. Congress moves slow. I don't have a whole lot of hope. I'm still 95.5 that they get it passed this year. Are we there yet? 86. He says, Big Jake, can you give us some numbers on potential payouts at the $100 XRP? Seems like a 4 to 5%, just enough to pay for custody and taxes. 10K XRP. Thank you for all that you do. God bless. It depends on if we get a tier 1 designation for the asset. If we do, and a lot of prime brokers, including Ripple Prime and some others, provide some solutions in the market through counterparties that are willing to work with retail in a regulated way, you might see higher returns than that. To get higher returns than that, you're going to have to be more aggressive with how that capital is deployed. You're going to have to understand the risk associated with it, and the margin that you get against it's going to have to be very little in order to generate returns above that amount. There are trading strategies that perform well, that Edge Capital and a few others out there have done well. That's an institutional partner, and other people. There's plenty of those in the market. So yeah, I think that we will have products that produce a higher return than that. The risks will be disclosed. There will be some additional risk to produce a higher return than that, for sure. We'll be further up the risk curve. There is no return without any risk. U.S. Treasuries, the U.S. has defaulted twice in its past. It currently is a tier 1 asset designated by the BIS, so is deemed riskless alongside gold. But there is some risk there still. It's just very little. And as you escalate up the risk curve, HELOCs and mortgages and other ways that you could be lending out capital, if the interest rates come down, those returns are also going to drop off too. Private credit, I think will still be around. It'll just be lower, that people are willing to, take loans at than the current environment. So if we continue to see them lower interest rates aggressively, or if we start to see them lower interest rates aggressively, that's going to move down the mark in the market for what people accept. But it's also going to push people out of banks to take higher risk with their money too. So, because people want to make 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% on their money. But I'm confident within the next 6 months we'll have a variety of ways to deploy the XRP to be able to generate a return that's at that or greater, depending on your allocation. And again, I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't tell you which one of those products to participate in. We want to democratize access and create solutions that all of our clients can participate in. But if XRP appreciates, we're probably just going to be dealing with accredited investors and QPs anyway. So more to come. We got Socratic Method 5. They say, when the reverse carry trade finally triggers, what happens to all that yen after it all settles down? What happens to the global market? The yen would be repaid. All of that debt would be repaid to the Bank of Japan. That is, not outstanding. There will be loans that are to Warren Buffett. Well, not Warren Buffett, but Berkshire Hathaway. Warren stepped down from running that company, but they're still stockpiling cash in yen to be able to provide liquidity in that circumstance. The Fed also has a significant amount of yen on their balance sheet at this point. Both will be lenders in that situation, so that debt would move from the Bank of Japan over to them. But yeah, I think there's going to be a huge credit crisis. But on the other side of that, I think that we will rebound quickly and we'll move into a period of pretty significant prosperity. I think that we're going to see significant upside markets post that, liquidity crisis. Tyler Vaughn says, Jake, thanks for all that you do. You've said it takes the perfect storm for all of this to play for XRP to appreciate. It's looking more and more like it will. But can you see a scenario where it doesn't? Mad Max, financial collapse, depression, global depression. We're screwed, and we're probably never going to get out of it if they don't do this. So pretty confident they're not going to allow that to happen, but that's the outcome if this doesn't take place. The old nail pounder, good to see you, sir. Says, hola, senor legend. Carbon One LLC trust all ready to go. Also, just got into the top 1% of holders. Awesome, dude. Congratulations. I propose the tea lady does Wednesday nights so we can meet the boss. Laugh out loud. God bless you and everyone at DAG. You know, I have tried to get my wife to do a podcast or something. She has extensive knowledge in canine and equestrian endeavors, and like probably the smartest person I've ever met on both of those topics. She, like myself, when I first started doing this, hates her own voice, and that's a big deterrent for her. I think she would be really good at it if she wanted to do that. And she has a lot of really valuable information over her, 30 years that she's been doing both of those things, that I think people would enjoy learning about. But I don't know that I'm ever going to get, I don't know that she'll ever be willing to do that. So maybe she would come on here. She would come on here and talk smack is all that it would be if she came on here. Yeah, congratulations on getting to that position, and really glad you were proactive and set up the LLC and trust. If you guys want to set up the LLC and trust, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to do the trust side, whether that's the more complex estate planning, it's probably where you would go to digitalfamilyoffice.io. You'd work with our team there. They'll help you set up a family constitution and do values-based planning in order to orchestrate an irrevocable trust or charitable remainder trust or whatever you want for your long-term vision for your family. It's a little more expensive, tens of thousands of dollars on that side. If you want just a living trust, a revocable living trust, it's $500, pretty simple. We can do that through the application. You go to app.digitalascensiongroup.com, just like it's spelled up there, and set up the LLC, and you can set up the trust there in the app as well. But yeah, awesome to see that you've been proactive. And if you are in the top 1%, I think that you're going to be very well positioned post-price appreciation to capitalize on your investment and have it structured the right way. Our son Burr, they say, hey, Jake, I don't care what anyone says. We love price predictions. What do you think this month and end of year? Again, I've said this before, but it really requires the macro events to play out. If we don't see anything here, I think we'll continue with the market cycle. I do think that we're going to see some liquidity move back in. I think if we don't see any outside catalyst, we could see XRP back up at 160, 150, somewhere in there by the end of the month. If we do get the culmination of all the things that I'm anticipating, we'll see substantially higher prices in the short term here. Again, I think that we need that in order for them to start using it on the 28th of this month. Could they kick the can on that? Absolutely. They pushed dates back many, many times. Could they push that back to the 13th of next month and do it on the same day that they tokenize stocks? Sure. Brad Garlinghouse has a tattoo that says 713 on it with the planets aligning. Maybe there's something to that. Again, tinfoil hat. I don't know. But all that being said, I don't think that we're going to make it to the end of the year. I think I'm going to beat scams this year. Pretty confident that I'm going to beat scams this year. I'm pretty confident that we're going to see higher than a $750 XRP by the end of 2026. So again, take it with a grain of salt. You come to your own financial conclusions and make your own financial decisions. I'm just a crazy guy on the internet that talks about, global macroeconomic events culminating to, a significant price appreciation for a digital asset. And there's lots of other people that don't think that's going to happen that are also extremely intelligent. So going on, MW4II, they say legend. If XRP reaches life-changing levels, would you consider a private humanitarian foundation over a traditional family office, and why? I think you could do both. I don't know why you would choose. Well, I guess it just depends on what you want to do, right? So I'm going to lay out a couple different scenarios here for clients that we've worked with. One family, the matriarch and patriarch that are the grandparents, have the allocation of XRP. They have 4 children and I think a total of 10 or 11 grandchildren. For them, legacy is very important. And so, and they're also very faith-based. They would have both of these things and do have both of these things. They've structured it in a way where they have a private foundation that they're able to allocate to. They have a charitable remainder trust. They have an irrevocable non-grantor, the trust that Dan Plaskett set up for them. And they've structured both ways because legacy is important and the philanthropic component is part of their legacy. If you are single, no kids, don't plan on having kids, older, don't have any close family members that you believe you would like to help, and you have strong philanthropic interests, the private foundation is probably the way to go. And the charitable remainder trust that's structured on top of that to be able to, rotate all that liquidity when you pass to the foundation. You're going to be philanthropic one way or another. And it's going to be willingly or unwillingly. The US government's either going to take your money and then dole it out the way that they want it to, or whatever government jurisdiction that you're in, or you're going to set up some type of foundation to be able to donate excess to, and then you'll get to dole that out as you see fit. So at high levels, like if you came into $100 million and you hadn't already gifted it out of your estate into an irrevocable trust, that's going to be one of the main ways people get the money out of their estate into a private foundation. That's why you see Zuckerberg and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bezos has a private foundation. Almost every wealthy person has some type of private foundation that they do philanthropic good through, or whatever you want to call some of the other stuff that people do. So the answer is probably both for most people, especially if you accumulate hundreds of millions of dollars. You're probably going to have, and again, like if legacy is not important to you and the money's just going to all go to the foundation anyway, then I could see that way. I don't know very many people that are invested in XRP that don't have some purpose or higher vision that has been put on their heart to help other people in some capacity, that they want to utilize a foundation or donor advised fund or charitable remainder trust or some philanthropic structure to do. XRP launch key. They say, John, sold my jet ski for XRP. Bought a new 90-day no pay. Hey, there you go. Good compromise, John. Well done, sir. I'm sure that this is his wife making this comment on here. That's a good compromise. I think you did well there. Because again, like I said, if there's enjoyment, if there is quality of life that you derive from being able to go out on the lake and enjoy that jet ski during the summer, you don't want to, take that away. So I think that was a really good compromise. Well done. Stud Muffin, Mr. Longhorn, they say, hey, Jake, a big Jakester. What's up, dude? Why is BTC and ETH products offered but dragging feet on XRP? Can't wait to start working with DWP when it happens. Peace. That's just where the liquidity is. I've talked about this in the past, but institutions roll out products where they can make money and there's demand. And also there has to be certain levels of liquidity in certain assets before they can really even touch it. I've talked about this problem before too, and it's not really a problem. It's just how these institutions work. So unless you had an ETF that had at least $100 million in it, pension funds and other allocators can't even allocate to it because the minimum check size they cut is $10 million and they can't own more than 10% of a structured product or an equity. So that's just the rules that they have to play by. And so until you have something that meets those parameters, they're not going to create a whole lot of products for it. So, once XRP appreciates, I'm sure that there'll be tons and tons of products. We've already seen ETFs. We've seen some other things. We're building plenty of things because we know that the liquidity is going to move there, and we're trying to be on the cutting edge of all that. Silent Seaman says, legendary. Yo, bro. What's it going to take to get you to rub the rock? Thanks for all that you do answering tough questions and having your conviction in DAG. Strong arm. Thank you, dude. So were you talking about the crystal ball? I need to look deep into the crystal ball and tell you guys what's going to happen. I What big rock? I don't know what she's talking about.
The one upstairs. The one upstairs. That big piece of jade.
Oh, the jade. Oh, you're the gentleman that gave me that. Thank you for that. It's upstairs. I have it in my room. I could put it on the desk. Maybe I'll move it down here for you. And I will even rub it. JC says, what are the events that BlackRock would ETF XRP? I don't know if that's worded correctly, but English may not be your first language. So I think that they already created the trust structure in Delaware. Ripple nor BlackRock came out and said that that was false. It was Bloomberg that reported that that structure was falsely filed, and that the DOJ was investigating. They kind of swept it under the rug, and we really haven't heard anything since then. So I think that structure is still there. It's just delisted off of Delaware's website, and they're ready to rock. No pun intended. Whenever the right time is, it's about timing. When there needs to be significant liquidity moved into XRP, that's when I think that they will roll that out. He says, he had one earlier, but he says, Mr. Muscles, what if no price appreciation when the DTCC starts in July? Or am I cray-cray for thinking that? I would say you were cray-cray for thinking that, personally. Chris, he says, what's the biggest piece of evidence that makes you bullish on XRP, year value for 2030? What XRP adoption milestone should investors watch that the market is currently overlooking? Losing hope. What can I share? I mean, I talk about everything in my domino theory. So I will say that there are a few people that reached out to me when I originally put that out that validated it. And many things have come to pass since I put that out originally. So I don't think their validation was wrong. So for me, that's a significant portion of why my conviction stays so strong in the theory that I have. Price 2030, I've said this before, but I think 6 figures is very reasonable, if not more. I think sometime during the next decade, we'll see $1 million XRP. The main things that I'm watching for are actual use. What dates are they going to have a high price for XRP to start using it? And again, 28th of this month seems likely. A lot of people anticipated some price appreciation for ISO. ISO is just a messaging system. It is a precursor for instant settlement. They've got to make sure that that's all working correctly, because if information is not structured the right way, there's no way that you can implement real-time settlement. So, that went live in November of last year. We've had 7 months since that went live. That's plenty of time in order for everybody to get, situated on that, and for the stragglers to get across the line. So I think they're ready to go here. And I'm waiting for things to move to real-time settlement. And I think that's going to be the tell. Key launch again. He says, Jay, did I trust before known can't borrow against it? Went uphold vault, reset goal, but less 20K. want LLC after price appreciation, but want to know if it's safe in the vault. iTrust is a good platform. They have, some good parameters around their stuff. Everything there is self-directed. As far as I'm aware, they don't have any products like we do to be able to generate additional returns on an IRA. IRAs, even if it's there or with us, you can't borrow against it. There is a specific structure that you can do for an IRA that kind of has a loophole in it for being able to borrow against the principal. Still working through that to see if that's viable. But additional returns that are generated can be moved into a side account where you should be able to borrow against them inside of an IRA, but you can't borrow against the principal. So that makes sense that you wouldn't be able to do that at iTrust. Vault at Uphold's great. I think that that's a really good product that they rolled out as a cold wallet that allows you to move assets back to their platform. They hold the third key in order to be able to regenerate the wallet if you were to lose, ownership of it. God forbid something happens to you and your family needs to get access to it. They can help them do that. I think that was kind of their makeshift solution for some of the estate planning because the individual accounts, there and pretty much anywhere else, if you don't have things structured the right way, they're going to liquidate assets and then hold those until probate are over and then give the cash to your family, whoever's supposed to get it. We've seen that happen with multiple different counterparties. So I think Vault's a good solution for that. I think that Uphold did a good job rolling that out. And I think that your assets are likely safe there unless you're going to give somebody your keys or you're going to get phished or hacked. Just make sure that you've secured that the right way. It's written down on paper, stored a couple different places. You've got your will and other stuff in place to make sure that, God forbid something happened to you, somebody can access it that you trust to help your family out. So we do have Uphold's platform integrated with dag.com over there on the Digital Ascension Group app. So still some latency in getting the account set up over there and some friction on that, which is a little frustrating, but they're working through it, and we appreciate their partnership and all the work that they're doing to help us out. Can't speak that language at all. I'm going to butcher it, so I'm just going to jump to the question. They said XRP did a 49,500% return. I think it was like 38,000% from 2017 to 2018. If XRP did the same now at the current price, it would bring the price to approximately $630 per token. Nothing new under the sun. I agree with you. I think that we're going to see a very similar percentage move to what we saw in 2017, 2018. Roscoe, they said, thanks to you and your team, Mastermind member. I often hear the question asked to you, when will XRP decouple from Bitcoin? What's the catalyst that will make that happen? What are the signs that we're looking for? I watched the XRP versus Bitcoin chart, and you will know when it is decoupling if you're watching that chart and it moves beyond what it's been in the past. Japan and the reverse carry trade and implications for Tether, the BlackRock ETF, Evernorth going live. I think all of those will kind of culminate to the perfect storm to be able to drive demand and decouple from XRP. And then once there's enough liquidity in XRP, I think that they will start using it at scale, and then it will maintain a high stable value because of the volume moving over the network. And it will be permanently decoupled from Bitcoin at that point. Like the champ says, you said $100 nice. I'm going to buy $100 for it. I did notice Uphold dropped daily buy in half. Do you think the US will implement unrealized gains on crypto like the Netherlands? I don't think that'll ever fly here. If it does, you're going to see a lot of people move away from the US. People have realized at this point, if you start treating people unfairly on taxes or do too much, a lot of the wealth just going to leave your jurisdiction. Anybody that is wealthy that has the means to be able to leave is going to do so. So I don't anticipate that the US would implement that here. Not so sure in Australia. Like they tried that and then they raised the tax rate and a bunch of stuff there on the self-managed super funds. As we shift into this new paradigm and we have AI and blockchain and it creates efficiencies, the GDP and the growth of these nations as they implement these technologies is going to be substantial. And they're going to have an asset to be able to draw down debt against that's going to continue as a positive feedback loop to be able to pull themselves out of debt. So the taxation, I think, will be less and less and less over time, especially because there's going to be less and less people that have jobs that are W-2 and are working. Going on, we already did that one. So I think I actually got through most, if not all, of the super chats. They moved the, how many basis points? Yeah, okay. So, well, that's it. Japan moved 25 bips. So, you know, like I said, I was 60% that direction. I don't think that's going to be enough to cause things to move. We're going to have to wait till the Fed lowers interest rates this week. If they hold rates, we're going to have to wait for another catalyst. But we're close here. I think that's it. I think I actually got through all the super chats. So if I'd missed yours, I apologize. Please send it over there to the email info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. Again, if you want to work with us on the LLC, you can go over to app.digitalascensiongroup.com and use the application there to structure your LLC. $1,500 makes it super simple. We do everything for you end to end. EIN, articles of organization, registered agent, certificate of good standing, banking memorandum. We help you set up the bank account there with Uphold to be able to have that functionality. If you don't get that quickly, you can also set one up at Old Glory. They do a good job for business accounts that are managing crypto. And on the wealth management side, if you have at least 50,000 XRP or at least $100,000 in digital assets, we'd love to work with you over there. You can go to digitalwealthpartners.net. We're going to be consolidating the brands in the near future. I think you guys will like what we roll out, so it's a little less confusing. And then last but not least, again, we'd love to see you in the mastermind. On the other side of price appreciation, we are going to shut that down. It will be invite only and be much more expensive. So if you want to go ahead and get in there, you can trial it. Just go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2, month to month, no contract, cancel at any time. Get in there, try it out, see if you like it. If you don't, that's okay. But we have over 17,000 people that continue to stay there and enjoy that community. So with that, I'm going to wrap it. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful Monday night, a wonderful, wonderful week, and we'll see you on the next one.